come to me. Come warm these old bones. How loyal you are. How good you are to me. You remind me of your predecessor. Oh, but that's right. You know nothing of him. His departure was abrupt. In fact, only 2 of my children have ever been permitted to leave their service as listener. That is, leave with their lives intact. The second was your predecessor. The first, well, even I wouldn't be so cruel as to prevent one of my favorite children from assuming the mantle of a Daedric prince. Ah, my former listener. The child that brought my children back to their mother. But that's right. You know him by history's name. Dragonborn. Such an unassuming man, a nobody, yet at the same time, the most accomplished mortal creature to ever walk Nirn. Oh, but Mother forgets. Her children could only see moments in time, only the possibilities in their own timelines. Such a waste. Allow Mother to tell you a story, child. A story of a man lost to history, yet immortalized in legend. For his exploits, any one of which worthy enough to make him my most cherished child, were many, yet mostly forgotten to time. His story starts in chains.
The first thing I remembered was the pain in the back of my head. Everything felt heavy. The last thing I can remember was getting attacked on the road. My body felt light and I was cold. Whoever attacked me took on my armor.
I could feel the cart moving before I could hear it. I slowly opened my eyes. I tried not to move around too much. I didn't want anyone to know I was awake yet. I could make out 2 Nords sitting across from me. It hurt to move my head. One of the Nords spoke to me. I could barely hear him though. My head hurt too much. I couldn't concentrate. I began to take in my surroundings. There were mountains on both sides of the cart I was traveling in. Behind us was an armored figure on horseback. I continued to look around. Ahead of us was another cart full of prisoners. I suppose that's what I was, a prisoner. Another guard rode in front of the cart.
Why do you care? A Nord's last thoughts should be of home. Rorikstead, I'm from
I looked for a way out of this situation, but found none. But before I could think of jumping out of the cart and making a run for it, I noticed people who were traveling towards us from it. I would have to wait for another chance. As we rode past the gates, I began to hear more and more voices. I saw more guards on horseback near the town gate, as well as villagers watching us from their homes. My head was still fuzzy. I was still confused as to how I wound up here. What was going on? The more I thought about it, the more I looked around for an escape. And finally I found it. An open gate with no guards near it. My heart leapt as I prepared to make my escape. And that's when I saw him. The man in the executioner hood. No sooner had I seen him that more guards seemed to appear from nowhere. The direness of my situation dawned on me as the carts rolled to a stop near a wooden block. It seemed the executioner was going to be put to work today. We were lined up after we were forced out of the carts.
Face your death with some courage, thief. You've got to tell them we weren't with you. This is a mistake.
One had a list in his hand. The other seemed to be barking orders to the rest. The prisoner in front of me began to panic and made a run for it. He began running down a path that I myself had been eyeing moments before. He was shot down by an archer that I also had failed to notice. I was called forward. The Nord asked who I was, and I told him. He checked his list.
You are not with the Thalmor Embassy, are you, High Elf? No, that can't be right. Captain, what should we do? He's not on the list.
Forget the list. He goes to the block.
By your orders, Captain. I'm sorry. We'll make sure.
My eyes met the captain's as she said those words. Without speaking, I gave her a look that conveyed my intention. Should I somehow escape the situation, I would end her life with my own hands. The Nords called us forward one by one and identified all of us. It seemed I was the only one who wasn't on their list. I still didn't know what was going on or why I was here. Once we were all identified, the Nords called us forward into a group, and a priest of Arche began to recite a prayer. The Nord in the front of the line cut off the priest of Arche and demanded that they speed up the execution. I admired this act of rebellion, though I was still frantically searching for a way out of this fate. I watched in silence, shocked as the Nord was forced to his knees, and his head forced upon the chopping block. Time seemed to freeze, and then all at once, it was over. The captain kicked the Nord's body away disgracefully. A strange sound echoed through the town. All the Nords around me seemed to be reacting to it, although I could barely hear anything around me. My heart was pounding so loud in my ears. I walked into place and was forced into position. So many questions whirled through my head as my head was forced down. I turned my head, determined to face my death head on, and that's when I saw it. A giant winged creature was flying towards the town, faster than anything I thought possible. The creature sped towards us. It landed on the tower near us and let out a mighty roar. All at once, the sky darkened, and the creature looked towards me. It let out a roar that somehow flung me across the courtyard. The sequence of events to follow are hard to remember. It may have been the shock of what had happened to me so far that day. It could have been the shock from hitting my head after getting tossed away like a rag doll. Everything was a blur. I remember running into a nearby tower. I remember running through hot flames. I remember running as fast as I could, almost blindly through the town. All around me, soldiers were attacking the creature, having seemingly forgot about myself and the rest of the prisoners. I ran past them as fast as I could. I came upon one of the prisoners I was brought to this cursed place with. He seemed to be arguing with one of the soldiers that captured us. I couldn't make out what they said, though I could clearly hear the soldier call the prisoner Relive. Relive turned and yelled at me to follow him as he ran into a nearby tower. I followed him in, right as the creature flew overhead. Outside, we could still hear the battle against the dragon. A dragon. It only then dawned on me what the creature was. I finally noticed Roloff. He was standing over a corpse against the far wall. One of his friends, it seemed. Roloff cut my hands free. He instructed me to take the armor and the weapons off the body and to use them myself. I removed the armor from the body and took the weapon. I donned the armor. However, I reached my hands out and closed my eyes for a moment. An ethereal bow appeared before me. Almost before the bow had fully formed, I had it at the ready with an ethereal arrow in my other hand. The only gate that didn't lead back outside was locked, but before I could even begin to look for the key, I heard a familiar voice coming from behind the gate. Roloff and I hid, and before long we could hear the sound of a key in the gate lock. 2 figures walked through the gate, and my vision suddenly narrowed. It was a captain that had ordered my death along with one of her subordinates. Without speaking, Roloff and I attacked. The battle was satisfying, but brief. Even in the fray, my arrows found their mark swiftly, and Roloff, it seemed, was just as adept at fighting as I was. We made short work of the two. Roloff beckoned me through the gate. Before I followed him, I stood over the captain's body. Ethereal arrow still piercing her body. I smiled, glad I was able to fulfill my promise to her so soon after making it. Roloff and I made our way through the tower, running into several more Imperials, as I found they were called, as well as more prisoners that were carted here with us. They called themselves Stormcloaks, and they seemed to be in some kind of feud with the Imperials. It mattered little to me. I didn't care for whatever local skirmish they were involved in. All I knew was that it was the Imperials who attacked me, captured me, and ordered my death, all without explanation. That was enough in my eyes to mark them as my enemy. We made our way through the fort and wound up in a cave system through a broken wall. We fought off spiders, bears, and even more Imperials before finally finding a cave leading back outside. Roloff and I walked into the sunlight, pausing for a moment to enjoy the fresh air, away from the fire, smoke, and screams. A dragon flew overhead, seemingly unaware of us, and flew off into the distance. When it was safe, Roloff and I came out of hiding. Roloff thanked me for my help, and I for his. He told me to find his sister in a nearby town, that she'd be able to help me. As we walked, Roloff and I decided to split up in case we were being looked for. Right before we did, we came upon 3 strange standing stones. Roloff mentioned they were part of 13 stones found around Skyrim, each with the power to grant a person different benefits. Before me stood a stone with the warrior sign, a stone with the sign of a thief, and finally a stone with the sign of a mage. Though I was never much good with magic outside of basic weapon conjuring, the mage stone seemed to call to me. I shook it off and began my journey to Riverwood, the nearby town that Roloff instructed me to go to. There, Roloff and I met up again and spoke to his sister. However, when we spoke of the dragon attack, she asked me to warn the Jarl of Whiterun, a major city to the northeast. Without thinking about it, I agreed, and after a quick meal, headed out of the town. To this day, I'm not entirely sure why I agreed to go to Whiterun. I didn't owe anyone anything. I was under no obligation to undertake such a task, and so far Skyrim had tried to kill me several times. But I found myself with no other plan and in need of work. So I set off towards Whiterun, the path taking me up through a mountain range. The mountains were cold, though it was still early in the day, so I wouldn't need to stop and camp before I made it over. Along the way, I ran into some bandits as well as several wild animals. Bandits, I found, no matter the region, were fairly predictable in battle, and it was pretty easy to tell when they'd set up an ambush along the road. Before long, I found myself in front of the gates of Whiterun. As I stood outside the gates, I had to fight the urge to turn around and leave. I went over the promise I made to Roloff's sister again, and heaved a weary sigh. I walked up to the gate and was stopped by a local guard. He asked my business, and I explained that Riverwood was requesting help. Oddly enough, the guard didn't seem surprised by the statement. Instead, he quickly gave me directions to the Jarl's home and ushered me inside the gates. As I entered Whiterun for the first time, I felt a cold feeling in the pit of my stomach. Something told me I would regret this decision.
But Mother has talked enough for today. Come, listener. Another desperate soul has performed the Black Sacrament. Yet another is to be claimed for the void.